to think about, and I actually finally put together like a little bit of like a cheat sheet of some good points that I've come across, read about, or just my own kind of research of it, what I found to be helpful to help talk about what do we do with all the violence in Scripture, especially because the book of Judges has a lot of it. I didn't want us to get too far into the book without having a chance to take a little excursus, a little sidetrack to look at it. The first half of the sheet here is actually all from some notes I found. Maybe you've heard of the Gospel Coalition. I believe it's a Reform-backed website. So I don't give all the theology on it, but some really good stuff on there. And I did find one author had a really good take on how do we handle violence in the Bible. There's some other notes after that.
What's that website?
The Gospel Coalition, and it is on the back page there. Even better website if you want a more Lutheran focused one. It's 1517.org. If you've never heard of that, awesome article on there. So I'll just kind of read through it and maybe make some commentary along the way or take questions, but I think this is important stuff. So big point number one, we can recontextualize the violence within the story of the Bible. This approach sees the violence in the context of God's bigger plan and character, climaxing with the cross. And we even just talked about that, right? That the cross being this unorthodox way of bringing salvation, salvation through violence. It's important to acknowledge our different reactions to violence. I'm shocked by it because I live such an aggressively sheltered life. The world of the text reflects the realities of life for most people who have ever lived, with war, instability, and constant struggle for survival. I think that's an important point. Like we're so wrapped into what we see in front of us today that living in a world where violence was day-to-day life, it's just out of our experience. And I think that's really important to understand. For most of history, people were living in times like the ones described in the Judges. It's an exception when we have peace like we do now, not the rule. And I think that's important to put the context of violence in there. Our reaction, next paragraph does conserve the book's message. So Judges, remember, this is supposed to be horrific. Things are not the way they're meant to be in this book. Judges is, in many ways, the dark sequel to the optimism of the book of Joshua, and illustrates, as Daniel Block puts it, the Canaanization of Israelite society during the period of the settlement. The external threats now become internal threats, as Israel becomes more and more like the surrounding nations. And the actions of the judges are often very ethically mixed, and there are few, if any, heroes. We're supposed to be appalled by the violence that we see in Judges. It's, again, not the way it's supposed to be. In bold there, it says, Israel's moral landslide illustrates precisely why God warned against coexisting with the Canaanites in the land. Total dismantling of the Canaanite civilization was necessary to protect Israel against becoming corrupted by the infrastructure of toxic idolatry. That's one of the things I think people get a little bit upset about when they see, right, when Joshua goes in and take over the land of Canaan and it's destroy everything, everyone, nothing, leave it standing. And you're just like, whoa, wait, God said to do that? Think of the bigger salvation picture, the rest of the article do that too, but what's more important? In the long term, the salvation plan coming to fruition, or being generous with some people who are actually very wicked and idolatrous and leading people astray? At that point, God had to intervene. We'll get more into that. So we also know that Israel failed, though, Judges 2, we already got into that a while back, a couple weeks ago. They covenanted with the people rather than driving them out in this tolerance of idolatrous practices, including child sacrifice, would eventually infiltrate Israel's worship. Maybe those are worth looking up. If someone wants to look up Jeremiah 7:18, this is not like a title warning. God said, like, you these people around, bad things are going to be coming your way through their influence. Someone's got Jeremiah 7:18. Someone else can maybe look at Ezekiel 20 just so you can hear how this did play out.
I got it.
Go ahead.
The children gather wood, the fathers light the fire, and the women knead the dough and make cakes of bread for the Queen of Heaven. They pour out drink offerings to other gods to provoke me to anger.
This is full on, they're doing pagan worship things, and sometimes it was even done in conjunction with your town.
The Baals,
Moloch was the Canaanite god that was especially associated with that. Anyone do Ezekiel 20? Jennifer? Oh, both Jennifers. Go ahead, Jennifer Paul.
Okay, I'll go. 20:31.
Yep.
When you offer your gifts, the sacrifice of your sons, in the fire, you continue to defile yourself with all your idols to this day. Am I to let you inquire of me, O house of Israel? As surely as I live, declares the sovereign Lord, I will not let you inquire of me.
So, there's violence, right? Violence being carried out against the innocent. And at a certain point, God had to intervene against that violence. Using violence at times. It's pretty intense. Now, the next part says, the Israelites, this is important, are never given a blank check for killing whomever they like, whenever they like. This is a pivotal, unique moment in history when judgment is being brought on the land, and God's plans to save the whole world are being enacted. This requires herod, which is a Hebrew word for utter destruction, in order to mitigate the risk of corruption of the pilot project Israel. That's what we were saying, the pilot project of Israel. It's a matter of national security, but also the worldwide mission, the mission of salvation. And if Israel is contaminated at this stage by false worship and idolatry, then they cannot do their job as God's spiritual lifeboat for the world. I think that's a pretty good way of talking about it. Israel was the lifeboat for the promise of Jesus, right? If they went down, if they were eradicated, if they fell away completely, that was the plan of salvation. Keeping that promise, that covenant, was more important than anything else as God goes through history. God's judgment of the Canaanites is one part of his plan to redeem humanity from within the mess of human history. And it is not indiscriminate violence, nor is it simply racially based. The Israelites will experience the same judgment as the Canaanites in 586 BC at the hands of the Babylonians when they failed God's covenant. For me, reading the Old Testament through the lens of the cross reveals a God who is anti-violent rather than non-violent. Anti-violent.